Elias Monroe didn't expect to get hit in the face with a soccer ball his first time stepping onto a neighborhood field, but the sharp sting across his cheek and the sound of someone gasping nearby made the whole situation weirdly refreshing. "Oh my God, are you okay?" A woman's voice shouted, clearly horrified. He blinked, dazed, and looked up to see a whirlwind of wild curls flying toward him. She was already crouched beside him before he could answer, brushing the hair out of his eyes with nervous hands. "Yeah," Elias coughed, sitting up. "Pretty sure I've been through worse." "You didn't even see it coming," she said, wincing. "That was my shot. I was aiming for the goal, not your face." He chuckled under his breath, trying not to stare at the woman kneeling beside him. She had dirt on her knee, grass on her elbow, and fire in her voice. She looked like the kind of woman who didn't apologize twice, but now she looked genuinely worried. "I'm Tessa Vance," she added quickly. "I play here every Saturday. You're new." "Elias," he answered, offering a hand. "And yeah. First time crashing a neighborhood game." "Well, welcome to the team," she said, finally smiling. He didn't tell her then that he'd just walked away from a $1 billion boardroom 2 hours earlier. He didn't say that Monroe Enterprises was exploding in the media again, or that his assistant had begged him to take a weekend in Monaco instead of bouncing around Brooklyn looking for God knows what. He especially didn't say that he didn't know why, but something about a handwritten flyer taped to a bodega window reading, "Saturday Soccer All Skill Levels Welcome," had pulled him in harder than any private jet or boardroom in months. And he definitely didn't say that when he saw her barefoot, yelling instructions, laughing like she didn't care who heard he'd felt something he hadn't in years. "Freedom, all right," Tessa clapped, standing. "We're short one player, you're in." "Even after I took a ball to the face," she grinned. "Especially after that, you've already paid your dues." The game was chaos, but the good kind. Kids ran across the sidelines with juice boxes, someone's dog kept stealing the ball, and no one cared about the score. Tessa was lightning fast, loud, and sharp with her passes. Elias, surprisingly, kept up. He played like someone who hadn't touched a ball in 20 years but hadn't forgotten how. By the second half, they were passing the ball back and forth like they'd been doing it forever. "Left," she shouted, darting into open space. He passed it, she scored, and the field exploded with cheers. Tessa threw her arms around him before he saw it coming. He froze in place for a second, startled, then felt her laugh against his chest. "Nice assist," she said, pulling back. He smiled, breathless. "Nice goal." After the game, people dispersed fast. Someone invited him for pizza, but he politely declined. He wasn't ready to explain why he could technically buy the entire pizza shop. Instead, he sat on the bench, unlacing his sneakers slowly, letting the sun warm his face. "You're not bad," Tessa said, plopping down beside him. "Neither are you," she raised an eyebrow. "I'm amazing," he laughed. "You're not wrong." There was a pause. Then she asked, "So what do you do when you're not getting hit in the face?" Elias hesitated for half a second. "I work in business," she squinted. "That's vague." "I'm a consultant," he added, "not a lie, just not all of it. You live around here?" "Not exactly. Visiting?" "Something like that." Tessa gave him a look, like she was trying to figure him out. "You're kind of mysterious. Is that a problem?" "No," she said slowly, "just unusual." He looked at her. Her cheeks were flushed from the sun, her smile still lingering, her eyes too direct to be anything but honest. "I liked playing with you," he said. "You're lucky I didn't break your nose." "I'd consider it a worthy sacrifice." She laughed again, and the sound hit him harder than the soccer ball had. "Same time next week?" she asked. "I'll be here." He meant it. He came back the next Saturday, and the one after that. Each time he showed up early. Not because the game started early, but because Tessa did. She always arrived 20 minutes before everyone else, stretching on the grass, sipping from a water bottle covered in stickers. Elias learned she was a high school art teacher. That she lived in a rent-controlled walk-up with peeling paint and sunflowers on the windowsill. That she hated coffee but loved dark chocolate, and she yelled at the TV during soccer matches like it was personal. She learned very little about him. "You never talk about your life," she pointed out one evening as they sat on the curb sharing a bag of chips. "I like hearing about yours," he said simply. "Elias." He looked at her. She was staring at him now, that same searching look. "Are you married?" No. Do you have a girlfriend? No. Are you hiding some secret identity? He paused, then smiled. Would you be mad if I was? She laughed. Only if it turns out you're a serial killer or a magician. Neither, he said. Promise. He didn't know how to tell her that he was the Elias Monroe whose name was on the front page of Forbes last month. That he owned shares in tech companies she probably used every day. That his penthouse had a skyline view and a grand piano he hadn't touched in years. He didn't want to ruin it. With Tessa, he wasn't a billionaire. He wasn't a headline. He was just a guy who showed up to play, but the longer he stayed, the harder it got. Because he wasn't just showing up for the game, he was showing up for her. And the more he saw her passionate, clever, chaotic Tessa, the more he realized something terrifying and real. He was falling for her, hard, and he hadn't even told her who he really was. You know, I almost didn't show up today, Tessa said, tossing her gym bag into the grass and flopping down beside him under the bleachers. Elias turned his head, surprised. The early morning sun hadn't burned through the clouds yet, and the field was still empty, the game at least 30 minutes away from starting. Why not? He asked. She pulled her knees up, hugging them loosely. Faculty meeting. They scheduled it for Saturday morning like we don't have lives. I ditched it halfway through when someone brought up installing vending machines with protein bars. I figured I had better things to do. Like hitting me in the face again, she grinned without looking at him. Exactly. He studied her in the quiet. She was wearing a threadbare hoodie over her shorts, hair pulled up in a haphazard knot. There was a tiny freckle just below her ear he hadn't noticed before. You ever think about quitting? She asked suddenly. Quitting what? Whatever you're doing. The thing you won't tell me about. His jaw tensed before he could stop it. That's bold. I'm curious, she said simply. You carry yourself like someone who's used to making big decisions, but you come here like you're trying to forget something. Elias didn't answer right away. A breeze picked up, ruffling the edge of her hoodie. A car honked in the distance. I've thought about walking away, he said finally, but I've spent too long building it. Sometimes I wonder if I'd even know who I was without it. She tilted her head toward him. Sounds like you built a prison and called it success. He met her eyes. You always this honest, only when I care. He didn't know what to say to that, so he didn't. Instead, he nodded toward the field. You ever think about going pro? Tessa laughed. When I was 16, I tried out for this regional development program. Didn't make the cut. I cried for 3 days and swore I'd never touch a ball again. Obviously, that didn't stick. Why not? Because I realized I didn't want to be great. I just wanted to love it again. Elias stared at her. You always know exactly what to say, don't you? She shrugged. Not really. I just stopped trying to impress people a long time ago. That hit him harder than he'd expected. The others started arriving soon after shouts and greetings. A cooler dropped on the grass, someone arguing over who brought the cones. But Elias stayed rooted in place as Tessa jogged to join them, her words looping in his head like a song he couldn't shake. He didn't want to impress her. He wanted her to see him. But the version of himself she saw now, quiet, simple, unburdened, wasn't the whole truth. If she knew who he really was, would she still sit beside him under those bleachers? After the game, she didn't linger like usual. She waved off an invitation to grab lunch, claiming errands and grading to catch up on. Elias watched her disappear down the sidewalk, her bag slung across her shoulder, her pace fast and focused. He knew he shouldn't follow. He really did. But he found himself walking in the same direction 20 minutes later, hands in his pockets, replaying every word she'd said. He didn't expect to find her sitting on the stoop of a brick building less than 4 blocks away, head bent over a sketch pad. You're stalking me now, she called without looking up. He paused. You knew I was here. You walk like someone trying not to look like they're following someone. He stepped closer. I was curious. She looked up at last. About what? What you do when you're not making me question all my life choices. She held up the pad. A pencil sketch of a pair of cleats, tangled in motion, nearly complete. It was raw, alive with movement. You draw your own feet. They're not mine, they're yours, he blinked. Seriously? Yeah, the way you plant before you pass. Left foot always digs in like you're anchoring yourself. I noticed. He sat down beside her. You see everything, don't you? Not everything, she said, closing the pad. Just the things that matter. They sat in silence for a while. A kid on a scooter zipped past. Somewhere above, a window slammed shut. "I want to show you something," Elias said suddenly. She looked at him warily. "If you say it involves a rooftop or a blindfold, I'm out." He stood. "Come on." She hesitated for one breath, then got up. They walked without speaking, weaving through narrow streets until they reached a quieter part of the neighborhood. He stopped in front of a black SUV parked by the curb. The driver stepped out immediately, opening the back door. Tessa froze. "I thought you said you didn't live around here," she said slowly. "I don't." "Then where are we going?" He held the door open, eyes on hers. "Somewhere I haven't taken anyone in a long time." She didn't move. "Tessa," he said, softer now, "I need you to see something." She stepped forward. The drive was short, but the silence felt long. Tessa didn't ask questions, and Elias didn't offer explanations. The SUV turned into an underground garage, and a private elevator swept them upward. When the doors opened, she stepped into a penthouse lined with floor-to-ceiling windows. The city stretched around them in every direction: rooftops, bridges, sky. A grand piano sat in the corner. A glass wall separated the living room from a library filled with first editions. The air smelled faintly of cedar and something expensive and unfamiliar. Tessa turned slowly, her eyes taking it all in. "This is yours." "Yes." She didn't sit. She didn't speak. "I wanted you to know," Elias said, voice low. "Who I am." She turned to face him. "You're Elias Monroe." He didn't flinch. "You've heard of me. Everyone's heard of you. You run half the city. You're on the cover of business magazines. You own," she paused, pressing a hand to her temple, "you own things I can't even afford to walk past." He stepped closer. "I didn't lie to you." "No," she said. "You just didn't tell the truth. I needed to know if you'd like me without all of this. And now that I do." He didn't answer. She shook her head. "You didn't trust me. I was scared." "Of what?" "That this," he gestured between them, "wouldn't survive the truth." She looked around again, slower this time. "This place is beautiful, but it's not what impresses me." He took a breath. "Then what does?" "The man who shows up early. Who passes instead of scoring, who listens without interrupting. That's the man I came to care about." His chest tightened. "I'm still that man." "Then prove it." "How?" "Take me back to the field next Saturday. No drivers, no elevator. Just you." "I will." "Good," she said, walking toward the door. "Because if you want me, Elias, you can't buy your way into my life." He watched her leave, her words echoing in the quiet. He hadn't lost her. Not yet. But she'd made one thing clear. If he wanted her, really wanted her, he'd have to fight for her on her terms. Saturday came with a thick gray sky and the kind of drizzle that usually kept half the team home. Elias stood on the edge of the field, hands shoved deep into his jacket pockets, eyes scanning the street. He'd walked there like she asked. No driver, no suit, just him. Tessa arrived 7 minutes late, hoodie damp at the shoulders, expression unreadable. "You came," she said, brushing water off her sleeves. "I said I would. I wasn't sure." "I was." She nodded, then dropped her bag next to the others. She didn't say anything else, just tied her shoes, rolled her sleeves, and joined the warm-up. The game was tighter than usual. Fewer players meant more running, more pressure. Tessa didn't speak to him beyond what the game required: quick calls, sharp directions, the occasional glance. She played like she had something to burn off. Elias didn't push. He passed when she asked, ran harder than he needed to, and kept his distance. When the game ended, most people left in pairs or small groups, laughing despite the rain. Tessa grabbed her bag and started walking toward the sidewalk. "Wait," he said, catching up. She stopped but didn't turn around. "I meant it," he said quietly. "All of it. Every time I showed up, it wasn't for the game. It was for you." Her shoulders rose once, then stilled. "You can't just say that and expect it to fix everything." "I don't expect anything, but I'm trying." She turned then, rain catching in her lashes. "Trying is easy when you have a penthouse to go back to." "I haven't been back there in 5 days." Her brow furrowed. "Why?" "Because I didn't want to walk into a place that reminded me how far I've drifted from the version of myself you make me want to be." She blinked once, then looked away. Elias took a breath. "Let me show you something. Not a penthouse, not a car, just something real." She hesitated, but finally nodded. They walked in silence for 3 blocks, then down a side alley that opened into a small brick building with a faded awning. Inside, the walls were covered in framed photographs, teams in matching jerseys, kids mid-kick, coaches with whistles slung around their necks. "My dad ran this place when I was a kid," Elias said, unlocking the front door with a worn key. "It used to be the heart of the neighborhood. After he died, the board tried to sell it. I bought it instead." Tessa stepped inside, eyes moving over the room. "It's a youth league center. It's been empty for years. I've been paying the taxes, keeping the lights on. But I haven't set foot in here since the day I signed the deed." She walked slowly, tracing her fingers along a dusty trophy case. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because it's the only thing I own that ever meant something before the money did." She turned to him, the air between them charged with something heavier than before. "You were a different person when you played here, weren't you?" "I was 13. I played barefoot half the time. My mom worked double shifts. My dad patched the field lines with spray paint from the hardware store." Tessa walked to the center of the room, stopping beneath a faded team photo. "You miss him." Every day, she looked back at him. "So do something with this place. Don't let it rot just because you're scared of what it reminds you of." "I want to," he said, "but I don't want to do it alone." Tessa's eyes softened not with pity but with something closer to recognition. "You want to build something," she said. "Not just buy it." "Yes," she crossed her arms, thinking. "Then here's what you do. You clean this place up. You open it again, not with your name on the door, not with press. Just you, some kids, and a ball." "I don't know where to start." "I do." She walked past him, pulled a marker from her bag, and scribbled something on the whiteboard beside the door. "First practice," she said. "Next Saturday, 4 p.m. He stepped closer. "You'll coach with me." "I'll coach you." He laughed, the sound low and real. "Deal." As she moved toward the door, he reached out and gently caught her wrist. "Tessa," she looked up. "I don't want to go back to pretending. I want to be the man who shows up, no matter what version of me you see." Her voice was steadier than he expected. "Then stop hiding. From me, from this." "I'm not hiding anymore." She studied him, eyes flicking over his face like she was trying to read the truth in every line. "Good," she said, and stepped outside. He followed her into the rain, and for the first time in months, he didn't feel like he was chasing something just out of reach. He walked beside her, equal steps, her shoulder brushing his. And for the first time in his life, Elias Monroe wasn't leading. He was following someone worth everything. The whistle blew sharply across the field, bouncing off the newly painted walls of the Youth League Center as sunlight streamed through the tall windows. A dozen kids scrambled across the turf, chasing the ball with the kind of joyful recklessness that only came from being completely unselfconscious. Elias stood on the sideline, sweat clinging to the back of his neck, watching Tessa pace the edge of the field with a clipboard in hand and a whistle slung around her wrist. "You're still letting them crowd the midfield," she called without looking up. "Split the wings. You're playing like a hedge fund, too dense in the middle." Elias shook his head, laughing under his breath. "You have a metaphor for everything." She finally looked at him, a slow grin tugging at the corners of her mouth. "Blame the art teacher in me. I make sense out of messes." "You're doing more than that," he said, stepping closer. "This place, it's alive because of you." She raised an eyebrow. "You think I did all this? You're the one who put it in motion. I just wrote the checks." "Wrong." Tessa's voice softened. "You showed up. That matters more than the money ever could." Elias's chest tightened in a way he wasn't used to. Not unpleasant, just unfamiliar. Like something valuable had settled there and wasn't planning to leave. He glanced toward the kids. "They're better than I expected." "They're better because they believe someone's watching," she replied. "They never had that before." A pause hung between them, full and quiet. "I want to keep doing this with you," Elias said. "Not just the games." "Everything?" Tessa didn't look surprised, just thoughtful. "You mean that?" "I've never meant anything more. I've spent years building things people admire, but this is the first thing that's made me feel proud." She looked down at her clipboard, then back at him. "I used to think love would feel like lightning, big and sudden and impossible to ignore, but it's steadier than I expected." "You're saying you feel it too?" "I'm saying I've been feeling it for a while." Elias took her hand, the clipboard tucked between them as their fingers laced together. "Then don't let go," he said, "because I'm not going anywhere." Tessa didn't answer with words. She just leaned in and kissed him lightly, surely like someone who already knew the answer. The next few weeks passed in motion. The center grew louder, livelier. Kids brought their siblings. Parents lingered longer at pick-up. Word spread without needing to be pushed. Tessa added art sessions on Sunday afternoons. Elias installed new lighting and hired a retired coach to assist. He turned an old office into a study lounge for after-school hours. The space began to hum with the kind of energy money couldn't buy. One evening, after the last child had been picked up and the lights dimmed, Tessa leaned against the front desk, flipping through a folder of sign-up sheets. "You know what I realized today?" she asked. "That you've become the most feared referee in Brooklyn." "That too," she said, laughing. "But also that you've stopped checking your phone during practice." Elias leaned beside her, arms crossed. "Didn't notice." "I did. Used to buzz every few minutes. Now it stays in your bag." He considered that. "Guess I finally understand what deserves my attention." Tessa slid the folder aside. "I never asked you what you gave up to be here." "I didn't give up anything," he said. "I traded noise for clarity. And I'd do it again." She studied him for a long moment. "You're different now, better, whole." That night, as they walked out into the street, Elias stopped suddenly. "I want to show you something," he said. Tessa narrowed her eyes. "If you say penthouse again, it's not that." He led her down the block, past shuttered shops and glowing lamplights, until they reached a quiet corner with a boarded storefront. In the window was a single paper sign. She squinted. "Future home of the Elias Monroe Community Arts and Athletics Center." He handed her a small envelope. Inside was a set of architectural sketches, half soccer facility, half open gallery space, with classrooms, studios, and a rooftop garden. Her voice caught. "You're building this." "We are," he said. "I bought the building last week. I want your name on it. I want your vision in it. And I want us to build it together." Tessa stared at the sketches, then up at him. "You didn't even ask if I'd say yes." "I didn't have to." She exhaled, the kind of breath that carried months of change behind it. "You really don't do anything halfway. Not when it matters." She wrapped her arms around his waist, resting her head against his chest. "I love you," she said quietly. He tightened his hold around her. "I love you more than I ever thought I could." The ribbon cutting happened 3 months later. The mayor showed up, but Elias barely noticed. His focus stayed on the kids bouncing on their toes in new jerseys, on the mural Tessa painted along the outside wall, and on the way she held his hand as if it belonged there. That evening, once the crowd had cleared and the music faded, Elias walked her to the garden at the top of the building, where string lights flickered in the warm dusk. He took a small box from his pocket, opened it slowly. Tessa's breath caught. "Elias, it's not about the ring," he said. "Or the timing, or the city. It's about the girl who hit me in the face and made me remember what it felt like to be seen not for what I have, but for who I am." She stepped closer, tears in her eyes. "I don't want a life where you're a part of it," he continued. "I want one where you're the heart of it. Will you marry me?" Tessa didn't hesitate. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, yes, yes." And when he kissed her, the whole city felt far away, like it had shrunk down to just this rooftop, just this moment, just them, not a headline, not a fortune. Just a man who showed up, and a woman who changed everything. The sun filtered through sheer curtains, casting golden patterns across the hardwood floor of the brownstone. A quiet hum of music drifted from the kitchen, and the smell of vanilla and cinnamon lingered in the air. Tessa stood barefoot at the island, flipping through a binder of hand-drawn plans on recycled sketch paper, her curls piled on her head with a pencil stuck through them like a flag of invention. Elias rubbed his palm across the back of his neck as he entered, watching her from the doorway. "You redesigned the upstairs gallery again," he said, nodding at the sketches. "Only the lighting," she replied without looking up. "The natural light from the west corner is better for the sculpture pieces. And the kids don't like working under fluorescence. You're going to drive the contractor insane." "He already is. He called me a creative menace yesterday." Elias walked to the counter and poured himself coffee, watching her flip another page. "You didn't sleep much last night," she shrugged. "I had a dream about a rotating wall installation and couldn't shake it. Figured I'd sketch it out before it dissolved." "You're obsessed. And you love it," he smiled into his coffee. "Completely." The doorbell rang before he could say more. Tessa raised an eyebrow. You expecting someone? No, Elias said, but I have a guess. He opened the door to find a deliveryman holding two matte black boxes and a small envelope. Elias signed, then brought everything inside. What is that? Tessa asked, drying her hands on a dish towel. He handed her one of the boxes. Open it. Inside was a pressed white garment rolled neatly around soft tissue paper. She unraveled it slowly, revealing a tailored jersey in deep navy, her last name stitched across the back in white thread. She blinked. Is this for the opening match? Look at the front. She turned it over. The left breast bore the logo of the center in simple, elegant embroidery, but below it, Tessa Monroe. She read aloud, stunned. You put my married name on it. He held up the matching box. Mine says the same. She looked up at him, eyes wide. You want us to wear these publicly? I want you to know that I'm not hiding you from anyone. Not the press, not the board, not the investors. You're not the woman behind the project, you're the heart of it. Wearing your name beside mine isn't a risk, it's a privilege. She stepped forward, jersey pressed to her chest. People are going to talk. Let them. I'd rather be yours loudly than anyone else silently. That night, the opening match took place under a sky painted in fading rose and soft lavender. The bleachers were packed kids, parents, neighbors, even a few reporters. No podiums, no red ropes. Just a referee, two teams, and a buzz that felt electric. Tessa wore her jersey with ripped jeans and beat-up sneakers. Elias wore his with tailored slacks and polished boots. Together, they stood on the sidelines, cheering and laughing, high-fiving the kids like they were all part of one giant, unpredictable family. After the game, the crowd lingered, sipping from paper cups and eating cookies someone's grandmother had brought in a floral tin. A local band played acoustic covers near the fence. The air smelled like grass and possibility. Elias wrapped his arm around Tessa's waist as they watched the kids chase each other across the field. You remember the first time we played here? He asked. I remember hitting you in the face, still the best thing that ever happened to me. She tilted her head. You've had yachts and private jets, and none of them ever made me feel like this. She leaned into him. You're not the man I met that day. I hope not. You're better now, she said softly, not because you gave things up, but because you learned what mattered. He kissed her temple. You taught me. The crowd finally began to thin as the sun dipped below the skyline. Elias took her hand and led her toward the building. The lights inside had been dimmed, but a low glow illuminated the entryway. He unlocked the door, then dropped her hand and stepped back. Go ahead, he said. She hesitated, then pushed the door open. A narrow hallway had been transformed into a gallery of moments. Large canvases lined the walls, photos of kids in mid-action, charcoal sketches of cleats and goalposts, watercolors of laughter. And in the center, beneath a spotlight, stood a sculpture made of metal and wood, two figures mid-kick, suspended in perfect balance. Tessa covered her mouth, eyes wide. You told me once you didn't want to be great, Elias said. You just wanted to love it again. This is what that looks like. She turned, tears shining. You made me a gallery. I made you a home. She moved toward him, wrapping her arms around his shoulders. I don't need anything else, she whispered. You already have everything. They stood there, wrapped in the quiet hum of joy, the kind that didn't need announcement or approval. Months later, the center was thriving. Local schools partnered with them. Artists volunteered. The kids came early and left late. Tessa launched a mentorship program for teen girls, and Elias started a scholarship fund in his father's name. They worked side by side, not perfectly, but honestly. On their anniversary, he surprised her with a rooftop garden dinner, just the two of them, candles flickering in glass jars, a projector playing home videos of the kids' art showcases on the side of the adjacent building. He cooked. She teased him for burning the garlic bread. They danced to no music, and when the stars came out, she rested her head on his chest and whispered, I still would have loved you without all of this. He kissed the top of her head and replied, but I became worthy of you because of all of this. They never went back to the penthouse. They sold it, anonymously, and donated the proceeds to build a second center in a city that needed one. They stayed in the brownstone, where the walls were filled with life and the stairs creaked when you ran down them too fast. They didn't need headlines anymore, they had each other. And that was more than enough.